So my name's Kerstin Neason and I work for Barnardos. I'm their assistant director and I cover Devon, Cornwall, Plymouth, Torbay, Guernsey and Jersey. Barnardos is the largest children's charity in the country and we have a long track record of working in Plymouth. We were very fortunate, maybe nearly 3 years ago now, to meet with Effervescent, and they completely inspired us to rethink the way that we approach social care. So our organisation has a long and proud history and we do very high quality projects, but we very much do them in a particular way. We have a Barnardos style. And when I met the team from Effervescent, I was rather challenged to think differently about how we might approach social care projects going forward. They took a very different approach to thinking about participation, and we very much believe that we put children at the centre of all of the work that we do, but Effervescent really challenged us to rethink that and to do that more, and to think about how we could be creatively ambitious as well as ambitious for social care outcomes. So we have run 2 projects with Effervescent so far. The first was a project called I'm Beautiful Now, and it was with our young carers. So young carers in Plymouth are a group of young people who have a caring responsibility for a parent or for somebody who's designated as their carer. So it may be that they're a young person looking after a parent with a drug or alcohol or mental health issue. We work with young carers in the highest bracket of need in the city, and they find themselves or describe themselves to be very much a carer for the whole of their lives. So to try to imagine a day in the life of a young carer, they would go into school, but they might be worried about a parent at home all the way throughout the day. Their social lives are completely hampered by their caring responsibilities, and they are really forced to grow up very, very quickly, so they begin to make adult decisions very early on. It's a project that's very close to my heart, and we're very proud to deliver it for Plymouth. But this was an opportunity to test with a group of young people whose needs are really quite complicated, how it would work if we co-designed a creative project with another organisation. So for us it was the first and a huge learning curve as a piece of work. They curated an exhibition that was just incredibly moving because it spoke to their own stories about being a young carer, and Effervescents were amazing in that they encouraged young people to find their own ways to express their personal circumstances, and the outcomes were so incredibly unexpected. I'm sure that there are some fundamental images, but I can't tell you how impactful it was to walk into the gallery for the first time, to be confronted with a huge black cloth cyclone, and to imagine that one of my very young people had come up with this metaphor for the way that their lives felt. The second project that we ran probably built on all of the learning from the first. We've been on an incredible journey together, really thinking about what were the strengths that Barnardos could bring in terms of safeguarding young people, enabling us to put the right formula in place really to take risks, but really what were the boundaries that we needed to put in place to work with children who were truly vulnerable. When we came to our second project, we decided we would work with young people who'd been sexually exploited, which presented a whole host of incredible safeguarding challenges for both organisations to come together. But having worked with Effervescents before, we were really confident that we could overcome some of that. So the young people were held in a very protective and therapeutic environment, largely by Effervescent staff, but also with their own project key workers from Barnardos, through a process which really amazed me because it encouraged them to engage with an artistic process. I'm going to slightly digress, but when we in the third sector for social care think about participation, we think about the rights of the child and the voice of the child, and where practice is at its best, we encourage children to participate in shaping the services that we wrap around them. The cold truth took young people on a journey where they learnt and understood about the process of communicating through the visual arts in a way that was so mature and so complex that I was stunned. My staff went through that as well in a strange kind of way. Their reflections were even more interesting. One of them said to me at the end, we stood at the exhibition at the end and it was all rather moving, and one of my members of staff said to me, "It was amazing. Until I did this project, I just thought art was like stuff that you stuck on a wall. Man, look at this, isn't it incredible?" And I remember thinking, this is a journey that very few adults have the privilege to experience, a cognitive process of understanding your issue, thinking about it in the context of lots of different artistic mediums and how that your issue might be communicated, and then working with some critical challenge to resolve a final outcome which you truly own, but is going to be aesthetically pleasing and yet challenging to the viewer. That in itself is an incredible process. That's an incredible process for an adult who's been through some kind of formal artistic education. Our service users, our CSE service users who engaged in the Cold Truth, none of them finished formal education in the way that one might expect. They were all very young. Their education pathways had been incredibly disrupted, and actually few of them had had really good experiences of school or education or any kind of formal learning. So for them to undertake this process, which was a huge commitment of their time, but also a huge challenge intellectually and a challenge to them in terms of their capacity to be attentive, that was just incredible. When we set the brief, I asked them to give me something that would communicate whatever was core to these service users. What I didn't expect was for the outcome to be so phenomenally beautiful and to engage so many different people. It's not a secret that children's social care is under more pressure today than it has ever been. And I think that within local areas, within social care systems, we're still thinking about social care solutions through a really narrow lens. What really excites me about this piece of work, or these two pieces of work, and our developing partnership, is that we're really beginning to challenge whether or not there are different ways to explore the world of good outcomes, good social care outcomes, through a completely different set of approaches and media. It's very helpful that the team at Effervescent take a very psychological and therapeutic approach to working with children and young people, and that actually is the common ground between Effervescent and Barnardos. Our attention to good therapeutic outcomes is our shared frame of reference, but the way we come at it is tremendously different. And I believe that the future of social care, both in terms of social care finance, but the way that we think about putting services and projects together, could potentially be transformed by thinking about working in a different way. And I think that for me is the underpinning strength of our partnership with Effervescent, and why I think we'll continue to build on it project after project, because for me, we have been, I don't know, it's an incredible cliche, but if you do the things you've always done, you get the results you've always got. And we need to think about how we do the things we've always done in a radically different way. And although we're not without our own internal capacity to do that, having a challenge from a completely different sector to do and think differently, I think has been fundamentally strong for our practice. So there are risks both at organisational level and for children and young people when you try to collaborate on social care projects with other organisations. For children and young people, our first tenet is do no harm. So our entire remit is to work with children and young people in order to improve their life chances and their outcomes. We're very resistant to taking risk when we don't know what those outcomes might be. So what I think Barnardos bring to the partnership with Effervescent is that host of safeguarding knowledge, skills and practice that we think about how we can mitigate all of the risks going into a project in order to safeguard the children that are participating. On an organisational level, I think there are some real challenges, because you're bringing together two completely different knowledge sets and histories. Effervescent is a tiny charity. We are enormous by comparison. Our history around safeguarding children is phenomenal. Effervescent is genuinely, and this is a new adventure for them. And I think what we've managed to do by building a very trusting professional relationship is have some of those critical dialogues, which sometimes are really challenging, around what do we need to do and how do we need to do it, or what do we need to do differently to ensure firstly that we do no harm and that all children and young people are safe. And if we are fortunate, and I think we are fortunate, and it is more by judgment than luck, that children and young people also have phenomenal outcomes out of our joint engagement with them. For the children and young people who took part, I think, without wanting to overstate it, it would be fair to say that they have had few experiences in their life where they have been recognised for being brilliant. They've had many experiences where they've been recognised for being, probably in their own language, for failing, for exhibiting challenging behaviours, for being vulnerable, for taking risk, for being part of the criminal justice system in some respect or another. But actually very rarely would they get feedback telling that they had been brilliant or inspirational, or that their wisdom was something that could be shared with others in a way that would be impactful on the world at large. So for me, the biggest difference getting this award would be the difference it would make to the young people who participated in it, because actually they're not affirmed often enough in a way that's really public.